The smoke from burning cities still rose into the red sky of New Terra. 3 years had passed since the Kralix Empire crushed the last human resistance. The alien conquerors believed they had wiped out every trace of humanity's fighting spirit. Their massive warships hung in the atmosphere like dark clouds, casting shadows over the broken settlements below. In the ruins of what was once the proud military base of Fort Harrison, an old man sat quietly in his small shelter. His name was Marcus Chin, and at 72 years old his body carried the weight of countless battles. Deep scars crossed his weathered hands, and his gray eyes held memories that younger generations would never understand. The Kralix had made a mistake. They thought age meant weakness. They thought broken bones meant a broken spirit. They were wrong. Marcus watched through his cracked window as a group of Kralix soldiers marched through the settlement. Their reptilian faces showed no emotion as they dragged away another group of human workers. The aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick green scales and powerful claws. Their energy weapons hummed with deadly power. "Please, my daughter is sick," cried a human woman as the soldiers pulled her away from her home. "She needs medicine." The lead Kralix warrior struck her with the back of his armored hand. The woman fell to the ground, blood flowing from her broken nose. Her young daughter, maybe 10 years old, screamed and tried to help her mother. The alien kicked the child aside like she was nothing. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His hands trembled, but not from age. It was anger. Pure, burning anger that he had kept locked away for 3 long years. The old soldier stood up slowly. His joints ached and his back protested, but his mind was sharp as ever. He walked to the corner of his shelter where a loose floorboard hid his greatest secret. Beneath it lay wrapped in old cloth was a weapon the Kralix thought no longer existed. It was a plasma rifle, one of the last remaining from humanity's elite warrior units. The weapon had been his companion through 40 years of military service. Its weight felt familiar in his hands like greeting an old friend. Marcus also pulled out his old combat armor. The black material was scarred and dented but still functional. He had maintained it carefully even when hope seemed lost. The armor bore the symbol of the Terra Defense Corps, a unit the Kralix believed they had completely destroyed. As he dressed in his old gear, Marcus thought about his fallen comrades. Captain Rodriguez, who died defending the orbital stations. Sergeant Kumar, who held the line at the Battle of 3 Moons. Lieutenant Parker, who never made it home from the final assault on Kralix Prime. They had called him the Ghost during the war. He could move through enemy lines like a shadow, striking targets and disappearing before anyone knew he was there. The Kralix had put a massive bounty on his head, but they never caught him. Now they thought he was just another broken old man, defeated and harmless. Outside, the woman with the bleeding nose tried to stand while her daughter helped her. The Kralix soldiers laughed at their struggle. One of them aimed his weapon at the child just to watch her fear. Marcus stepped out of his shelter. The first alien to see him stopped and stared. The old human was wearing military gear, but that was impossible. All the human warriors were dead. This had to be some kind of joke. "You there, old man?" The lead Kralix called out in broken human speech. "Remove that armor. It is forbidden." Marcus said nothing. He simply raised his plasma rifle and fired. The energy bolt struck the alien center mass, burning through his armor like paper. The Kralix warrior fell backward, smoke rising from the hole in his chest. His 3 companions stood frozen in shock for a precious second. That was all Marcus needed. He moved with deadly precision, each shot finding its target. Years of training and combat experience guided his hands. The plasma rifle hummed and fired, hummed and fired. In less than 5 seconds, all 4 aliens lay dead in the street. The human civilians stared at the old man in amazement. They had watched their world burn, their people enslaved, their hope crushed. And now this ancient warrior had just killed 4 Kralix soldiers like they were nothing. Marcus helped the wounded woman to her feet. "Take your daughter and get everyone inside," he told her. "More will come soon." The woman nodded, too shocked to speak. She gathered her child and ran toward the other humans, spreading the word. Marcus checked his weapon's power cell. Still plenty of charge left. He had planned for this day, stockpiling equipment and supplies in hidden caches throughout the settlement. The Kralix thought they knew everything about human technology, but they had never encountered the special weapons of the Terra Defense Corps. High above, alarms began to sound from the Kralix command ship. Their sensors had detected weapons fire, and now 4 of their soldiers were not responding to communication attempts. A patrol dropship detached from the main vessel and began descending toward the settlement. Marcus watched it approach and smiled for the first time in 3 years. He had spent decades learning how to fight these monsters. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their arrogance. The Kraliks had declared humanity's warriors extinct. They had celebrated their total victory. They had grown comfortable and careless, but one old soldier still remembered how to fight, and he was about to remind the galaxy why humans had once been the most feared warriors in known space. The Kraliks dropship landed with a thunderous roar, its engines kicking up clouds of dust and debris. 8 heavily armed soldiers emerged, their scales gleaming in the dim light. They moved in perfect formation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. Marcus had already disappeared. The old soldier moved through the ruins with the silence of a ghost. His decades of experience had taught him every trick of urban warfare. While the aliens searched the main street where their comrades had died, Marcus circled around through the destroyed buildings. The humans had learned to fear the Kraliks, but the aliens had grown too confident. They expected cowering civilians and broken resistance fighters. They did not expect a predator stalking them through the rubble. Marcus positioned himself in the shell of an old shop, 20 meters behind the alien patrol. He steadied his rifle against a broken wall and targeted the squad leader. The plasma bolt took the alien in the head, dropping him instantly. The remaining 7 spun around, confused and angry. Their thermal sensors showed nothing but cooling rubble. Their motion detectors picked up only the frightened heartbeats of hiding humans. Marcus was already moving to his next position. From a different angle, he fired again. Another Kralix fell, armor smoking. The survivors opened fire wildly, their energy weapons carving chunks out of buildings but hitting nothing. Spread out. "Find the shooter!" roared the new squad leader in their harsh language. But Marcus understood every word. During his 40 years of military service, he had made it his business to learn everything about humanity's enemies. He spoke 7 alien languages fluently and understood the tactics of a dozen different species. The Kraliks were strong and well-armed, but they were also predictable. They relied on their superior technology and physical strength. They had never learned to fight an enemy who used cunning instead of force. Marcus picked off 2 more soldiers before the survivors realized they were being hunted by a master. By then it was too late. The old warrior had maneuvered them into a kill zone where they had no cover and no escape. The last 4 aliens died within seconds of each other. As Marcus checked the bodies for useful equipment, he thought about the war that had brought humanity to this point. The Kralix Empire had seemed unstoppable when they first arrived in human space. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their armies larger. But humans had something the aliens couldn't understand. They called it stubbornness, but Marcus knew better. It was the refusal to accept defeat, even when victory seemed impossible. The Terra Defense Corps had been humanity's answer to the Kralix threat. Elite soldiers trained from childhood to fight impossible odds. They learned to use the enemy's strengths against them, to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. Marcus had joined when he was 18, fresh out of the colony farms of Kepler-7. The training had been brutal. Of the 1,000 recruits in his class, only 50 had graduated. Of those 50, Marcus was one of only 3 who survived the entire war. Until 3 years ago, when the final human stronghold fell, the old soldier stripped the dead aliens of their communication devices and energy cells. The Kralix equipment was well made, and Marcus had learned long ago how to modify it for human use. He attached one of their comm units to his armor and began listening to their radio chatter. The command ship above was trying to contact both patrols. When they received no response, they would send more soldiers. Marcus estimated he had maybe 20 minutes before the next wave arrived. He used that time wisely. Moving through the settlement, Marcus found the hidden caches he had prepared over the past 3 years. Each one contained weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and equipment salvaged from the ruins of human civilization. The Kralix had been so confident in their victory that they never bothered to search thoroughly. At the 3rd cache, Marcus found what he was looking for: a long-range transmitter carefully shielded from alien detection. He had built it himself using parts from a dozen different sources. If any other human resistance cells had survived, this would reach them. Marcus activated the device and began broadcasting on the old Terra Defense Corps emergency frequency. "This is Ghost Actual," he said, using his wartime call sign. "Anyone receiving this transmission, respond immediately." The dead walk again. For 5 minutes he heard only static, then faintly a voice crackled through the interference. "Ghost Actual, this is Hawk 7, we read you. Location unknown, but we're still fighting." Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. "Hawk 7, good to hear your voice. How many survivors in your cell?" 15 combat-effective personnel, Ghost. We've been hitting supply convoys in the northern wastes. What's your situation?" "Currently operating solo in Settlement 77 Alpha. Just eliminated 12 Kralix regulars. Preparing for escalation, there was a pause. When Hawk 7 responded, Marcus could hear the smile in the voice. "Copy that, Ghost. We always knew you were too stubborn to die." "Orders?" Marcus thought for a moment. For 3 years, the scattered remnants of humanity had hidden like frightened animals. They had accepted defeat, believing their military leaders were all dead. But if even 2 resistance cells had survived, there might be more. "Hawk 7, begin active recruitment. Find every survivor who can hold a weapon. Spread the word that the Terra Defense Corps is operational again. We're going to remind these lizards why they used to fear human soldiers." "Understood, Ghost. Any specific targets?" Marcus looked up at the Kralix command ship hanging in the sky above his settlement. Its weapons could level the entire area in minutes, but that same arrogance that made the aliens confident also made them predictable. "Negative on specific targets for now. Focus on building strength. I'm going to be busy for the next few hours." As if summoned by his words, 3 more dropships detached from the command vessel and began descending toward the settlement. Marcus counted the ships and estimated their cargo capacity. Probably 36 soldiers total, plus support equipment. The old soldier smiled and checked his weapon again. During the war, he had once held off an entire Kralix battalion for 6 hours while civilian transports evacuated a colony world. 36 aliens would barely count as a warm-up. Marcus found a good position in the ruins of the old communications tower. From here, he could see the entire settlement and had multiple escape routes. He set up his rifle and began calculating angles and distances. The dropships landed in a triangle formation around the settlement, their doors opening to disgorge squads of heavily armed Kralix warriors. These ones were different from the earlier patrols. Their armor was heavier, their weapons more sophisticated. The Empire was taking this threat seriously, but they still didn't understand what they were facing. Marcus targeted the squad leader from the nearest dropship and fired. The alien's head vanished in a flash of plasma. Before the body hit the ground, Marcus was already moving to his next position. The hunt had begun. The Kralix soldiers spread out through the settlement like a plague of armored death. Their thermal scanners swept the ruins, searching for the ghost who had killed their comrades. They moved in coordinated teams, covering each other's advances with practiced precision. Marcus watched them from his position atop the water treatment plant. These weren't the regular garrison troops he had faced earlier. These were Kralix assault marines, the Empire's elite soldiers. Their equipment was top tier, their training extensive, their experience vast. Against any normal human resistance cell, they would have been unstoppable. But Marcus Chen was not normal. The old soldier had spent 4 decades studying alien warfare. He knew that the Kralix assault marines relied on overwhelming firepower and superior technology. They expected enemies to either flee or make desperate stands in fortified positions. Marcus would give them neither. He slipped down from the water plant through a maintenance shaft he had discovered weeks ago. The tunnel led to the old sewer system, which connected to every building in the settlement. The Kralix had never bothered to map the underground passages, considering them unimportant. Another mistake. Marcus emerged behind the easternmost squad, just as they were checking the ruins of the old school. The team leader was examining the bodies of the first patrol, trying to determine what kind of weapon had killed them. The plasma bolt took him in the back, burning through his armor like acid through paper. The other 3 Marines spun around, weapons raised, but Marcus was already gone. He had dropped back into the sewers through a storm drain, invisible once again. The surviving Marines called for backup and began a systematic search of the area. They found nothing but shadows and echoes. From the command ship high above, Admiral Vorthak watched the battle through his tactical displays. The massive Kralix commander had conquered 17 different species during his career. He had never encountered a foe like this mysterious human warrior. "Report," he demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, we have lost contact with 16 soldiers in the past hour. The surviving teams report a single human fighter using hit-and-run tactics. No visual confirmation yet." Vorthak's scaled fist slammed onto his command chair. "Impossible. The human military was completely destroyed. Their leaders are all dead. This must be some kind of automated defense system." But deep down, the admiral suspected the truth. During the war, there had been rumors of human soldiers who fought like demons, warriors who could disappear into thin air and strike from anywhere. The Empire had dismissed such stories as propaganda. Perhaps they had been wrong. Down in the settlement, Marcus continued his deadly game. He knew every building, every tunnel, every hiding spot. The Kralix were powerful, but they were fighting on his ground now. From the basement of the old medical clinic, he emerged behind another squad. His plasma rifle spoke 3 times in rapid succession, dropping 3 Marines before they knew he was there. The 4th alien managed to get off a wild shot before Marcus's 4th bolt found its mark. The old soldier quickly stripped the bodies of ammunition and equipment. The Kralix energy cells were compatible with his weapon systems, and their grenades would be useful for the next phase of his plan. Marcus activated his commandeered comm unit and listened to the enemy chatter. The Marines were frustrated and angry. They were used to fighting enemies who stood and fought like soldiers. This invisible killer was something new and terrifying. "Alpha Squad, report your position," crackled a voice through the static. "Alpha Squad is gone," Marcus said in perfect Kralix, using the dead squad leader's comm frequency. The ghost took them all. Silence filled the channel. Then an enraged voice replied, "Identify yourself immediately. I am the ghost of every human warrior you thought you had killed." Marcus continued in their language. "I am the nightmare that hunts you in the dark. I am what happens when you underestimate the children of Terra." Marcus could hear the confusion and fear in the alien voices as they tried to process what they were hearing. A human who spoke their language perfectly, who knew their tactics, who could kill their elite Marines like they were nothing. The old soldier smiled and switched to another frequency. This one connected him directly to the command ship. "Admiral Vorthak," he said, pronouncing the name with perfect accent. "I know you're listening." There was a long pause before the Admiral's voice came through the comm. "How do you know my name, human?" "I know many things about you, Admiral. I know you commanded the 3rd Fleet at the Battle of Kepler Prime. I know you personally ordered the bombardment of the civilian shelters on New Tokyo. I know you thought you had won this war." Marcus paused to relocate, moving through the tunnels to his next position. "But you made one mistake, Admiral. You let one of us live. The human resistance is broken," Vorthak roared. "Your armies are destroyed. Your leaders are dead." "My armies?" Marcus emerged in the ruins of the old bank, where 2 more Marine squads were advancing. "Admiral, I never needed an army." The old soldier opened fire, his plasma rifle cutting through the aliens like lightning through darkness. He moved between cover points with fluid grace, each shot precise and deadly. Within minutes, 8 more Kralix Marines lay dead in the street. Marcus took a moment to catch his breath. His 72-year-old body was beginning to feel the strain, but his mind remained sharp. He had eliminated over 20 elite soldiers in less than 2 hours. The Kralix were beginning to understand that they faced something unprecedented. Through his stolen comm unit, Marcus could hear the fear creeping into the alien voices. These were veteran soldiers who had conquered worlds, and now they were afraid of one old human. The Admiral's voice came through again, tight with rage. "What do you want?" Marcus thought about that question. What did he want? Justice for the billions of humans killed in the war? Revenge for his fallen comrades? Freedom for the survivors who lived under alien rule? All of those things, but something more important as well. "I want you to remember something, Admiral," Marcus said as he prepared for the next phase of his assault. "Before your empire existed, before your species learned to build starships, humans were already warriors. We fought each other for thousands of years, learning every possible way to kill and survive. We studied war like scientists study equations." Another squad of Marines approached his position. Marcus let them get close before striking, his plasma rifle punching through their armor with surgical precision. "We didn't just fight your empire because we had to. he continued after the aliens were dead. "We fought because war is what we were born for. Every human child grows up hearing stories of heroes who stood against impossible odds. Every human dreams of being the warrior who never surrenders." Marcus could see the dropships beginning to retreat, their pilots unwilling to risk landing more troops. The remaining Marines were pulling back to defensive positions, too afraid to continue the hunt. "You thought you had killed all of our warriors, Admiral, but you cannot kill what we are. You cannot destroy the fire that burns in human hearts, and now that fire is spreading." As if summoned by his words, explosions lit up the horizon. Other resistance cells were striking Kralix positions across the continent. The signal had gone out, and humanity's warriors were awakening from their long sleep. Marcus looked up at the command ship hanging in the sky above him. Soon, very soon, he would teach the Kralix the most important lesson of all: never count humans out of a fight. 3 days after the battle, Marcus sat in the hidden bunker he had built beneath the old library. Around him, 15 humans worked quietly at various tasks. Some cleaned weapons, others studied tactical maps, and a few monitored communication. Equipment that crackled with messages from resistance. Cells across the galaxy, the old soldiers' call to arms had awakened something that the Kralix thought they had destroyed forever. Across human space, survivors were emerging from hiding places, picking up weapons and remembering what it meant to fight. "Ghost Actual, this is Phoenix Base," came a voice through the main transmitter. "We have 43 volunteers ready for action. Requesting orders." Marcus keyed the microphone. "Phoenix Base, good to hear from you. What's your equipment status?" "Mix of salvaged human tech and captured Kralix gear. We have enough small arms for everyone, plus 3 heavy weapons and limited explosives." "Copy that, Phoenix. Begin harassment operations against supply lines in your sector. Avoid direct confrontation with major forces until we're ready for the next phase." Marcus had been coordinating resistance activities for 72 hours straight. Every few minutes, another cell checked in. Former soldiers, civilian volunteers, even teenagers who had grown up under Kralix rule, but still carried the fighting spirit of their ancestors. Sarah Martinez, a former Navy pilot who had spent 3 years pretending to be a simple maintenance worker, looked up from the star charts she was studying. "Marcus, we're getting reports from the Outer Rim. Hawk 7's group hit a major supply depot yesterday. They captured enough weapons to arm 200 fighters." Marcus nodded. Sarah had been one of the first to answer his call. At 35, she was young enough to still have fire in her belly and experienced enough to know how to fight smart. Her knowledge of Kralix ship designs had already proven invaluable. "Any word from the core worlds?" Marcus asked. David Park, a former intelligence officer who had been monitoring alien communications, looked up from his equipment. "Still mostly quiet there, sir. The Kralix have heavier security in the core systems, but we did pick up some coded transmissions that might be from resistance cells." Marcus walked over to the large tactical display that dominated the center of the bunker. The holographic map showed the entire human sector of the galaxy. Red markers indicated confirmed Kralix positions, while green dots marked active resistance cells. 3 days ago, there had been maybe a dozen green dots. Now there were over 60, and more appeared every hour. "Tell me about the Kralix response," Marcus said. David pulled up intelligence reports on his screen. They're confused and angry. "Admiral Vorthak has declared martial law on 23 worlds. They're conducting house-to-house searches, executing anyone found with weapons, increasing patrols everywhere." "Good," Marcus said, surprising the younger man. "Fear makes them predictable. When the Kralix are afraid, they become more aggressive but less careful. We can use that." Elena Rodriguez, a former Special Forces sergeant who had lost her entire family in the initial invasion, looked up from the weapon she was modifying. "Marcus, what exactly are we building toward here? We have maybe 2,000 fighters across 50 worlds. The Kralix Empire has millions of soldiers and thousands of warships." It was a fair question. Marcus had been thinking about the same thing for 3 days. In terms of pure numbers, the Resistance stood no chance against the Empire. But numbers weren't everything. "Elena, let me tell you a story," Marcus said, settling into a chair. The others gathered around him, sensing something important was coming. 200 years ago, when humans first started expanding into space, we encountered a species called the Vectar. They were older than us, more advanced, with technology we could barely understand. Their empire spanned half the galaxy. Marcus paused to take a sip of water. His throat was still raw from smoke he had inhaled during the battle. The Vectar looked at humanity and saw a young, primitive species that would make good servants. They demanded we submit to their rule. When we refused, they sent a fleet to force our compliance. Sarah leaned forward. I never heard this story in the history classes. Most people haven't, Marcus continued. The Vectar expected an easy victory. They had superior ships, better weapons, more soldiers. What they didn't expect was how humans fight when we're cornered. The old soldier stood and walked to the wall display, which showed historical battle footage from humanity's early space conflicts. We couldn't match their technology, so we didn't try. Instead, we studied them. We learned their weaknesses, their blind spots, their arrogance. Then we did something the Vectar had never seen before. Marcus activated a recording of an old space battle. The footage showed human ships using unconventional tactics, ramming enemy vessels, fighting from inside asteroid fields, setting traps in gravity wells. We fought dirty. We ignored the rules of civilized warfare. We turned our own ships into weapons. We used the environment against them. We made every victory cost them more than they could afford to lose. David stared at the display. What happened to them? The Vectar Empire fell apart within 50 years. Not because we destroyed them in battle, but because we made ruling the galaxy too expensive. Their other subject species saw what we were doing and started their own rebellions. The Vectar couldn't be everywhere at once. Marcus turned back to his audience. That's what we're going to do to the Kraliks. We're not going to beat them in open battle. We're going to make them bleed for every world, every system, every decision. We're going to remind the galaxy that humans don't stay conquered. Elena nodded slowly. But we need more than harassment raids. We need a symbol. Something that shows the galaxy that humanity's warriors are back. Marcus smiled. I've been thinking about that too. The Kraliks have a major staging area at the old human colony of New Geneva. It's heavily defended, supposedly impregnable. Admiral Vorthak himself is scheduled to visit next week for an inspection. The room fell silent as everyone understood what Marcus was suggesting. You want to attack a major Kraliks base? Sarah asked. With what? We have small arms and a few stolen ships. We have something better, Marcus replied. We have the knowledge of how to fight impossible battles and win them. During the war, I studied every major engagement between humans and aliens. Do you know what our best victories had in common? He waited for their responses, then continued. They all involved someone doing something the enemy thought was impossible. At the Battle of Rigel 7, Captain Kim flew her damaged cruiser directly into a Kraliks dreadnought. At the defense of Luna, Colonel Hassan held off an entire fleet with nothing but orbital defense platforms and pure stubbornness. Marcus pulled up tactical data on New Geneva. The base is built into an asteroid field. The Kraliks think it's safe because no sane commander would try to navigate a fleet through those rocks. But we don't need a fleet. He highlighted specific points on the display. I've been studying their patrol patterns, their sensor grids, their defensive positions. There's a way in, but it requires precise timing and absolute commitment. Elena stood up, her eyes bright with something that hadn't been there since the war ended. When do we leave? We don't, Marcus said. I go alone. This isn't a mission for a team. Like hell, Sarah interrupted. You spent 3 days teaching us that humans fight together. You're not going to abandon that lesson now. Marcus looked around the room at faces that had learned to hope again. These people had found their courage because they believed in him. Now they were ready to follow him into the most dangerous mission of their lives. All right, he said finally, but we do this right. We plan every detail, prepare for every contingency, and make sure we have an escape route. The goal isn't to die gloriously. The goal is to hit them so hard that every human in the galaxy knows we're still fighting. As his team began planning humanity's boldest strike against the Kraliks Empire, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since the early days of the war. He felt like a soldier again. The asteroid field around New Geneva stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. Jagged rocks the size of mountains drifted in slow, deadly orbits around the former human colony. The Kraliks had built their fortress into the largest asteroid, carving out docking bays and weapon emplacements that could destroy any approaching fleet. Marcus Chen guided his stolen Kralik scout ship through the floating maze of stone and metal. Behind him, Sarah Martinez piloted a second captured vessel, while Elena Rodriguez and David Park followed in a modified human cargo hauler. The small fleet moved slowly, using the asteroids as cover while they approached their target. Ghost Actual, this is Phoenix 2. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the base. They've got enough firepower to level a continent. Copy that, Phoenix 2, Marcus replied. Remember, we're not here to slug it out with their defenses. We get in, hit the target, and get out before they know what happened. The plan was audacious even by Marcus's standards. While Admiral Vorthak inspected the base, Marcus and his team would infiltrate the asteroid fortress, plant explosives in critical locations, and hopefully capture or kill the Admiral himself. If they succeeded, it would be the most significant blow against the Kralix Empire since the war began. If they failed, the Resistance would lose its best fighters and its most experienced leader. Marcus had spent 2 weeks studying intelligence reports about New Geneva. The base housed over 10,000 Kralix soldiers, along with weapon stockpiles, communication arrays, and the regional command center for 3 star systems. It was supposed to be impregnable, but Marcus had learned long ago that nothing was truly impregnable if you were willing to pay the price. Phoenix 3, report your status, Marcus said. Elena's voice came through clear and determined. Explosives are armed and ready. David has the communication jammers online. We're good to go. Marcus checked his chronometer. Admiral Vorthak's personal dreadnought had arrived at the base 6 hours ago. The inspection tour was scheduled to last another 4 hours, giving them a narrow window of opportunity. All right, people. This is it. Phoenix 2, you take the northern approach. Phoenix 3, follow the planned route to the communication center. I'll handle the Admiral. Roger that, Ghost, Sarah replied. Try not to have all the fun without us. Marcus smiled despite the danger. Sarah's pilot training had made her fearless in a cockpit, and her sense of humor kept everyone's spirits up during the darkest moments. The old soldier guided his ship toward a seemingly solid section of the asteroid. As he approached, his sensors detected the hidden docking bay that intelligence reports had described. The Kralix had carved the entrance to look like natural rock formation, but Marcus could see the subtle differences that marked it as artificial. A patrol ship emerged from the hidden bay, its sensors sweeping the area for threats. Marcus held his breath as the alien vessel passed within a few hundred meters of his position. The captured ship's identification codes held up under scrutiny, and the patrol moved on without incident. Marcus slipped into the docking bay behind a supply transport that was returning from a routine mission. The massive chamber carved into the asteroid could hold dozens of ships, and the constant traffic gave him perfect cover. He landed in a maintenance area and quickly donned his combat armor. The black material had served him well for over 40 years, and today it would be tested again. Marcus checked his weapons one final time. Plasma rifle, sidearm, combat knife, and enough explosives to level a city block. Moving through the base's corridors required all of Marcus's stealth training. The Kralix had sensors everywhere, but they were designed to detect large groups of enemies. Not a single infiltrator who knew how to avoid detection. Marcus moved like a shadow, using maintenance shafts and service tunnels to reach his target. The intelligence reports had been accurate. Admiral Vorthak was inspecting the base's main command center, surrounded by his personal guard and the base's senior officers. Marcus positioned himself in a ventilation shaft above the chamber and studied the layout. 23 Kralix warriors stood between him and his target. The Admiral himself was a massive specimen, even by alien standards, standing nearly 9 feet tall with scales that looked like armored plates. His personal guards were equipped with the best weapons and armor the Empire could provide. Marcus had faced worse odds before. He dropped his first explosive device into the chamber's main power conduit and activated the timer. In 60 seconds, the lights would go out and emergency power would kick in. That would give him the distraction he needed. The old soldier dropped through a ceiling panel into the command center just as the lights died. In the confusion that followed, Marcus moved like death incarnate. His plasma rifle spoke again and again, each shot finding its target with deadly precision. The Admiral's guards were elite soldiers, but they had never faced anything like Marcus Chen. He flowed between cover points like water, each movement calculated to confuse and disorient his enemies. By the time emergency lighting came online, half of the guards were dead. "Protect the Admiral," roared the surviving guard captain. The aliens formed a defensive circle around Vorthak, their weapons sweeping the chamber for targets. Marcus smiled and activated his second surprise. The smoke grenades he had planted filled the command center with thick choking clouds that confused Kralix sensors. Now the aliens were fighting blind while Marcus could see perfectly through his armor's advanced optics. The battle became a massacre. Marcus picked off the guards one by one, using their confusion against them. The Admiral himself tried to reach the emergency exit, but Marcus was there waiting. "Going somewhere, Admiral?" Marcus said in perfect Kralix. Vorthak spun around, his massive form towering over the human warrior. The alien's scaled face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Impossible. You are just one old human." "Just one old human," Marcus agreed. "But I represent something you never understood. I represent every human warrior who died fighting your empire, every mother who lost her children, every father who watched his world burn." The Admiral drew his ceremonial sword, a massive blade designed for his enormous hands. "Then die like the rest of your pathetic species." Vorthak charged with surprising speed for such a large creature. His sword carved through the air where Marcus had been standing, but the old soldier was already moving. Marcus had studied Kralix combat techniques for decades, and he knew exactly how to counter their preferred fighting style. The plasma rifle bolt took the Admiral in the shoulder, spinning him around but not stopping his advance. Vorthak was tougher than his guards, his natural armor absorbing most of the energy. Marcus holstered his rifle and drew his combat knife. The blade was a masterpiece of human engineering, forged from materials that could cut through almost anything. Marcus had carried it through every major battle of the war, and it had never failed him. Admiral and soldier circled each other in the smoke-filled command center. Vorthak had reach and strength, but Marcus had speed and experience. When the alien lunged again, Marcus slipped under his guard and drove the knife deep into Vorthak's chest. The Admiral staggered backward, alien blood flowing from the wound. His eyes were wide with shock and something else Marcus recognized: respect. "How?" Vorthak gasped. "How did one human do this?" Marcus looked into the dying Admiral's eyes and spoke the truth that the Kralix Empire had never understood. "Because we never surrender. Because we never stop fighting. Because this is what humans do when you threaten everything we love." As Admiral Vorthak fell, explosions began rocking the base. Sarah and Elena had reached their targets, and the asteroid fortress was coming apart at the seams. Marcus grabbed the Admiral's personal communication device and accessed the base's main transmitter. Across the galaxy, on every world where humans lived under Kralix rule, Marcus's voice rang out strong and clear. "This is Ghost Actual to all human resistance cells. Admiral Vorthak is dead. New Geneva base is destroyed. The Kralix are not invincible. The war begins again." The message from New Geneva spread across human space like wildfire. On worlds where people had lived in fear for 3 years, resistance cells emerged from hiding. In factories where humans worked as slaves, workers began sabotaging Kralix equipment. In detention centers across the galaxy, prisoners started planning escapes. Marcus's words had done more than announce a victory. They had reminded humanity that they were warriors, not victims. 3 weeks after the destruction of New Geneva base, Marcus sat in the command center of a captured Kralix frigate. The ship had been taken by a joint operation involving 6 different resistance cells, coordinated through the communication network that now spanned dozens of worlds. "Report from Kepler-7, Sarah announced from the communications station. "They've successfully liberated 3 labor camps and captured enough weapons to arm 500 fighters." Marcus nodded as he studied the tactical display. Green markers now outnumbered red ones in several sectors. The resistance had grown from scattered survivors to a genuine military force in less than a month. "What about the core worlds?" Marcus asked. David looked up from his intelligence console. "Still heavily fortified, but we're seeing increased activity. The Kralix are pulling troops back from the outer systems to reinforce their major bases." Elena entered the command center carrying a datapad with the latest casualty reports. Her expression was grim but determined. "We've lost 2 cells this week. Phoenix 7 was caught in an ambush on Rigel Prime. Hawk 12 walked into a trap on New Tokyo." Marcus felt the weight of every lost life. These weren't just numbers on a screen. They were people who had trusted him, who had followed his call to arms. But he also knew that war always demanded a price. "Any survivors?" he asked. "Phoenix 7 had 3 people escape. They're trying to reach Hawk 9's territory. Hawk 12. No survivors confirmed yet." The old soldier was quiet for a moment, thinking about the young faces he had seen in the resistance cells. Many of them had been children when the war ended. They had grown up under Kralix rule, but they still carried the fighting spirit of their ancestors. "Marcus," Sarah said, breaking his thoughts. "You need to see this." She transferred a signal to the main display. The image showed a Kralix news broadcast, but the translation software revealed something extraordinary. For the first time since the invasion, the aliens were admitting that they faced a serious threat. The terrorist attacks have spread to 14 systems, the Kralix news anchor was saying. Imperial forces are working to contain the violence, but Admiral Zethkar has declared that all humans found with weapons will be executed immediately. Marcus smiled. Fear was making the Kralix leadership desperate, and desperate enemies made mistakes. There's more, David added. He pulled up intercepted communications from the Kralix command network. They're arguing among themselves. Some admirals want to negotiate with the resistance. Others are calling for the complete extermination of the human species. Good, Marcus said. Division in their leadership means opportunity for us. The communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. Sarah activated the signal and a familiar voice filled the command center. Ghost Actual, this is Wolfpack Leader. We need to talk. Marcus recognized the call sign. Wolfpack had been one of the most successful special operations units during the original war. If their leader had survived, it meant the resistance had gained another experienced commander. Wolfpack Leader, good to hear your voice. What's your situation? We have 300 combat veterans spread across the Centauri sector. All former military, all ready to fight. But we need coordination with the other cells. Marcus exchanged glances with his team. 300 experienced soldiers would be a huge addition to their forces. Copy that. Wolfpack, stand by for tactical briefing. Over the next hour, Marcus coordinated with resistance leaders across human space. The network had grown beyond his wildest expectations. Former soldiers were training civilian volunteers. Scientists were developing new weapons. Engineers were modifying captured Kralix equipment for human use. But the most important change was in the spirit of the human survivors. 3 weeks ago, they had been a defeated people hiding in the ruins of their civilization. Now they were an army, united by the knowledge that their warriors had returned. Marcus, Elena said, reviewing strategic reports. The Kralix are massing forces in the Vega system. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major counteroffensive. Marcus studied the enemy fleet movements on the tactical display. The aliens were finally taking the resistance seriously, committing significant resources to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. How many ships? He asked. 57 vessels, including 4 dreadnoughts. Enough firepower to glass every human world in 3 sectors. Sarah whistled softly. That's more than we faced in some of the major battles during the war. Marcus was quiet as he considered their options. The resistance had grown quickly, but they still lacked the heavy weapons needed to fight a conventional space battle. Most of their ships were captured patrol craft and converted civilian vessels, but conventional tactics weren't the only way to fight. David, what do we know about the Kralix fleet composition? The intelligence officer pulled up detailed analysis. Mix of battleships, cruisers, and support vessels. They're using standard Imperial formation tactics. Concentrated firepower with layered defenses. Marcus nodded. The Kralix were excellent at conventional warfare, but they had learned their tactics fighting other species that followed similar rules. Humans had always been different. What's the status of the Yorktown project? Marcus asked. Elena checked her reports. The engineering team on Luna 7 says they need another week to complete the modifications. Marcus made his decision. Tell them they have 3 days. If the Kralix want a major battle, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The Yorktown had been a human colony ship before the war, designed to transport 50,000 people across interstellar distances. The Kralix had captured it during the final assault on Earth, but they had never bothered to fully explore its capabilities. Now, a team of human engineers was turning it into something unprecedented. A ship designed not to win battles, but to make winning too expensive for the enemy to afford. You're really going to do it? Sarah asked. Take on an entire Kralix battle fleet with converted civilian ships and improvised weapons? Marcus looked at the tactical display, calculating odds and possibilities. By any reasonable military analysis, the mission was suicide. The Kralix had superior numbers, better weapons, and more experience with large-scale space combat. But Marcus had learned long ago that reasonable military analysis didn't account for human determination. Sarah, during the original war, what was the most important lesson we learned about fighting aliens? She thought for a moment. That they expect us to fight like them? Exactly. The Kralix have studied every major space battle in galactic history. They know how to counter every conventional tactic. but they've never faced an enemy willing to turn their own ships into weapons. Marcus activated the galaxy-wide communication network that connected every resistance cell. His voice carried to hidden bases on 100 worlds, to fighters hiding in asteroid belts, to prisoners planning escapes from alien detention centers. This is Ghost Actual to all resistance forces. The Kralix are coming in strength. They think they can crush us before we become a real threat. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate human warriors. On worlds across the galaxy, people stopped what they were doing to listen. Former soldiers checked their weapons. Civilian volunteers prepared for their first taste of real combat. Children who had grown up under alien rule prepared to fight for the freedom they had never known. In 3 days, we show the galaxy that humanity's warriors are back. We show the Kralix that some things are worth any sacrifice. We show everyone that humans don't just survive. We fight back. As Marcus ended the transmission, he felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. What happened in the next few days would determine whether humanity regained its freedom or disappeared forever into the darkness of alien rule. The old soldier smiled and began planning humanity's most desperate gamble. The Kralix battle fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 57 warships arranged in the classic Imperial assault pattern, their weapons charged and ready for battle. Admiral Kreshtal commanded from the flagship Inevitable Victory, confident that this show of force would end the human rebellion once and for all. "Admiral," reported the tactical officer, "we're detecting multiple human vessels in the asteroid field around the old mining station. Estimated 23 ships of various classes." Kreshtal studied the display with satisfaction. The humans had gathered their entire fleet to make a final stand. After today, there would be no more resistance, no more raids, no more embarrassing defeats like New Geneva. "Signal the fleet," the admiral commanded. "We will destroy them completely. No survivors." But as the Kralix force advanced, something seemed wrong to the experienced admiral. The human ships were arranged in a loose formation that made no tactical sense. Their positioning offered no defensive advantages and left them vulnerable to concentrated fire. It was almost as if they wanted to be destroyed. Aboard the modified colony ship Yorktown, Marcus Chen watched the Kralix fleet approach. The massive vessel had been transformed in 3 frantic days of round-the-clock work. Its cargo holds now contained enough explosives to crack a moon. Its engines had been modified for maximum acceleration, and its crew consisted entirely of volunteers. Ghost Actual. "This is Phoenix, leader." Sarah's voice came through the comm from her position commanding the smaller human vessels. "Kralix fleet is in range. They're taking the bait." Marcus keyed the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is Ghost Actual. Today we write the final chapter of humanity's return to the stars. Today we show the galaxy what human warriors are capable of when they fight for everything they love." Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were people who had lost everything to the Kralix Empire. Families, homes, futures, all sacrificed to alien greed and cruelty. But instead of breaking them, the losses had forged them into something harder than steel. "Incoming transmission from the Kralix flagship," reported the communications officer. Marcus nodded. "Put it through." Admiral Kreshetal's scaled face appeared on the main screen. "Human leader, I offer you one chance to surrender. Your ships will be destroyed, but your crews may be spared if you yield immediately." Marcus looked directly into the alien's eyes. "Admiral, I have a counteroffer. Withdraw from human space immediately, and we might let some of your people live." The Kralix admiral snarled. "Arrogant insects. You are outnumbered 3 to 1. Your ships are inferior. Your weapons are obsolete. What makes you think you can threaten my fleet?" Marcus smiled the cold smile of a man who had spent 40 years learning how to kill aliens. "Because we're not here to fight your fleet, Admiral. We're here to destroy it." The transmission ended. Marcus turned to his crew. "Begin final approach. All ships execute Plan Omega." What happened next defied every principle of space combat doctrine ever written. Instead of engaging at long range where their inferior weapons would be at a disadvantage, the human ships accelerated directly toward the Kralix fleet. The smaller resistance vessels spread out in seemingly random patterns, drawing fire from the alien warships. They twisted and weaved through the asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover while the Kralix struggled to target them in the chaotic environment. But the real target was never the human fleet. Yorktown continued its approach toward the center of the Kralix formation. accelerating to velocities that should have torn the aging colony ship apart. In the engine room, human engineers pushed the modified drives beyond all safety limits. "Admiral, the large human vessel is on a collision course with our position," the Kralix tactical officer reported. "Impact in 4 minutes." Kreshtal studied the display with growing alarm. The human ship was massive, large enough to cause significant damage even to a dreadnought if it hit at full speed. "All batteries target that ship. Destroy it immediately." Energy beams and missiles converged on the Yorktown from a dozen different angles. The ship's shields flared and died under the concentrated bombardment. Armor plating vaporized under the assault. Atmosphere vented from dozens of hull breaches, but the colony ship kept coming. On the bridge, Marcus felt the deck shake as another energy beam carved through the hull. Emergency lights flickered as power systems failed. The acrid smell of burning electronics filled the air. "Ghost actual," Elena called from the engineering station. "We've lost main power, secondary systems failing. Hull integrity at 30%. Marcus checked the tactical display. 2 minutes to target, all crew to escape pods, he ordered. "This is not a suicide mission. We complete the objective and we get out alive." As his people evacuated the dying ship, Marcus remained at the command station. Someone had to guide the Yorktown to its target, and he had always known this moment might come. "Marcus, get to the pods." Sarah's voice crackled through the failing communication system. "Negative, Phoenix leader. Someone has to fly this bucket. Take command of the fleet and complete the mission." The old soldier sealed the bridge and diverted all remaining power to the engines. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the Kralix flagship growing larger with each passing second. Admiral Kreshtal watched in horror as the burning human ship continued its approach. His weapons had torn it apart, but somehow it kept coming. This was beyond military logic, beyond rational thought. This was something purely human. "All ships, emergency evasive maneuvers," the Admiral commanded, but it was too late. The Kralix fleet was trapped in their own formation, unable to move quickly enough to avoid the incoming missile that had once been a colony ship. At the last moment, Marcus activated the Yorktown's final surprise. The cargo holds that had once carried colonists to new worlds now erupted in a chain reaction that lit up space like a newborn star. The explosion vaporized 3 Kralix battleships instantly. The shockwave crippled a dozen more vessels and scattered the remainder across the asteroid field. In one moment, the most powerful Kralix fleet ever assembled became a floating graveyard. But Marcus Chen was not among the casualties. At the final second, he had activated the modified escape pod that Elena had secretly installed on the bridge. The blast launched him clear of the explosion, unconscious but alive. Sarah found him 3 hours later, drifting among the wreckage of both fleets. When she brought him aboard her ship, the first thing Marcus saw was Elena's smiling face. "Did we win?" he asked. Elena laughed through her tears. "Marcus, you just destroyed the most powerful fleet in the Kralix Empire with a converted passenger ship. Every human in the galaxy is celebrating. Resistance cells are coming out of hiding on 50 worlds. The aliens are in full retreat." Over the following weeks, the victory at the asteroid field became the turning point of the new war. The Kralix Empire, demoralized by the destruction of their fleet and the death of another admiral, began withdrawing from human space. More importantly, humanity had rediscovered something the aliens thought they had destroyed: the warrior spirit that had carried them from a single world to the stars. Marcus Chen returned to his settlement on New Terra, but not as a broken old man hiding from alien oppressors. He came back as what he had always been: a soldier of humanity, a guardian of freedom, and living proof that some things can never be conquered. In the years that followed, children would hear the story of the ghost who returned from the dead to fight for his people. They would learn that warriors are not born from weapons or armor, but from the willingness to stand up when everything seems lost. And they would remember that as long as humans drew breath, the spirit of the warrior would never truly die. The old soldier had kept his promise. He had reminded the galaxy what it meant to face humanity in battle, and the galaxy would never forget.